All right. Hi, everyone out there, and welcome to our fourth installment of A Sailor's Life Live from the USS Constitution Museum. My name is Emily. I'm an educator at the museum, and we are located in Boston, Massachusetts. And our museum, normally when we're open, but now online, is full of interactive exhibits and objects and stories that tell the history of America's ship of state, the USS Constitution. And my co-host today is an active duty Navy sailor on USS Constitution. This ship is located right across the Navy Yard from us in Boston, Massachusetts as well. And I'm going to throw it over to Seaman Sek, who's on the ship, to introduce himself and to also just give us a sense of why USS Constitution is so special.
Seaman Sek here. For a little bit about myself.
Hold fast. Hold on.
There you go. Okay.
Right. Can you see this?
There you go.
All right, you can hear us, you can see us, right?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. Just making sure. So as I was saying, I'm Seaman Sek. I'm going to be your, I guess, other virtual tour guide for the day here on the USS Constitution. And what makes the USS Constitution so special? There's a lot of things. You can start with our nicknames. Old Ironsides, 33 and O, and the oldest commissioned warship afloat. I would just pick on one of those, the oldest commissioned warship afloat. With the oldest commission, meaning that we still serve a task in the Navy. And we were built in 1798, and till now, we still serve a particular, task for the Navy. All right, we might not be battle ready in a sense, like most other of the modern ships, but commission meaning that we actually still serve a task in the Navy. The other one, 33 and 0. All right, in all our 33 engagements, we have lost zero. I mean, absolutely zero. And the other one, Old Ironsides, right? We'll get into that one a little bit later. But our Old Ironsides, pretty much, our sides are made of iron, but it's this special construction that has pretty much kept this ship preserved over a long period of time. So those are just a couple of our nicknames, what make us so special. The reason why I love the ship, let's see. There's a lot of things I could go on about why I love the ship, but I think the way it's situated here in Boston, I love the city of Boston, and it has a lot of history about it. And I myself, Sekiziwa, I'm not from here. I'm from Uganda, Africa. So I came to the United States when I was around 8 years old. I was still young. And then I lived in Los Angeles, California. That's where I resided for a while. But then eventually moving here to Boston, it's a big change. It's a very small, compact, dense city, but I love the city of Boston and I love the history. And I hopefully you enjoyed the history as well.
Awesome. Thank you. So glad to have you with us today for our program on Sailor Chores here. Yeah, so we're going to put you to work soon, okay?
All right, no problem.
All right, cool. We'll join back up with Seaman Sek in a little bit.
All right.
Yeah. So this is our second installment about sailor chores. 2 weeks ago, I did a program on sailor chores, and I just want to recap a little about what we talked about. Sailors did chores like all of us on the ship. We've been stuck at home, maybe doing more chores normally than we do. Sailors were also stuck at home in the sense that the ship was their home and they were on the ship for months at a time. And so they were put to work doing chores. And last program, we talked about 3 common ones they did every day. So let's do a quick recap for those who are new. First chore they would have done, make their bed, or in the case of the Navy, stowing their hammock. This illustration you see here shows all the sailors asleep in their hammocks. Every morning they had to get up, take down their hammock, roll it into a bundle, and carry it up to the top of the ship, the top deck, and place it in the hammock netting. And that would give that hammock some fresh air, and it would also allow the dark, kind of crammed place where they sleep some fresh air as well. So that was one chore. We also talked about holy stoning the deck. This was a chore where sailors got down on their hands and knees and used a stone to clean the wooden decks of USS Constitution. And this was one of the most least liked chores by the sailors and something they had to do every day. And lastly, we talked about the chore of cleaning the bathroom. Or on a ship, cleaning the head is what they called the bathroom. If you remember, that your business went right into the ocean, so you often had to sweep up around there. Or for the officers, you had to empty their chamber pot into the ocean as one of your chores. And so I think in our poll last time, this was the chore that got the least, people really didn't want to do this one. Pretty gross, but that's okay. It was life in general on a ship. So today we're doing Sailor Chores Part 2. You guys actually inspired this program because last time we asked in the chat, what are the type of chores you are doing at home right now? And some of you guys came up with chores that I hadn't thought about, but actually that the sailors did as well. And so we're gonna explore some of those today. But I do wanna ask first to think a little deeper about why do we do chores at all? What is the point? Why are they important? You might hate them, but there is a reason we do them. And so if you could look at the bottom of your screen in the chat button and just type some answers for me. Why do we do chores? What is the point of that? And while you're doing that, if you have a question, there is also a Q&A button at the bottom there. You're welcome to ask a question, and my colleague is behind the scenes. She should be able to answer those questions for you. So anyone in the chat, we do chores to keep the house clean. Right. Cleanliness is one of the reasons that we do chores. Healthy. Yep. Yep. So that's definitely one of the reasons to be clean. A lot of people are putting that. If you guys pay attention to the chat, to help out, get a skill. That's true. It does help you learn some skills that'll last you the rest of your life. Awesome. Yeah, so for these reasons, there's definitely reasons that we do chores. And the sailors, it was similar reasons that they did these as well. It wasn't just for fun. Chores, as you all are saying, was for hygiene. It was for cleanliness. You had 450 sailors crammed on a ship with nowhere to go. And the one thing you kind of could control was the cleaning. And that was important because disease and illness was a huge killer on a ship. Way more sailors on USS Constitution died because of illness than in battle. Illnesses like fever, tuberculosis, consumption. And these were things that were easily caught on a ship. And so keeping them clean and doing chores was a way to keep those at bay as best they could. Another reason, of course, was to keep things in order and keep a sense of routine, stay busy. Sailors, battle was not a huge part of their life. It was a small percentage of their time on the ship. They spent hours alone in the ocean. They needed something to do. Chores was a way to keep busy as well. So we'll keep that in mind today as we talk about our two chores. And keep in mind that cleanliness was something very important to the sailors. Obviously, we're living in this kind of life now. Hand sanitizer, masks. We're doing what we can to stay healthy and clean. And sailors were doing the best they could as well. So we're going to start by talking about two chores today that involved washing things. Washing dishes is the first chore we're going to chat about. And washing dishes, to understand how they did that on the ship, you have to understand there were two types of dishes that they had to wash. And those were the officers' dishes and the enlisted dishes. So let's start with the officers' dishes. The officers on the ship were the folks who had the most experience, the most education, and so they had the fanciest perks. So here's an illustration of the ship's officers on Constitution eating a meal. Now pay attention to the types of dishes that they're using. All right, see plates and wine glasses and serving plates and spoons and things like that. So keep this in mind for a second. And Seaman Sec, I'm gonna throw it over to you. And if you could show us the officer's wardroom on Constitution and set the scene for us, that would be awesome.
Most definitely. So yeah, we are transitioning here into the officer's wardroom. All right. As you can understand, the average height back then is 5'6". I'm 6'4", so I'm way over my head here. But as we move up here, this is the officer's wardroom. All right. So this is pretty much where the officers congregated, the way they got together to meet and discuss things about the ship. If you look in here, hopefully my cameraman can get it. Each one of these was staterooms where the individual officers slept. A lot of these are closed off, but I think this one will give you a good view there. Those were the officers' staterooms where, as you can see, there's a desk in there. They would have had a cot in there as well. And yeah, it's pretty much where the officers would.
Ooh, okay. We lost you a little there. Can you give us a shot of the table where they would have eat their meals?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to see there. Oh, so this right here.
Awesome. Okay.
It's the table right here where they used to sit and eat, and that is that, do other stuff, as I said, they'll congregate, they'll get together here to discuss whatever matters of the stuff pertaining to the ship. So yeah, this is where they eat.
Okay. Good. Thank you for setting the scene for us there. That gives us an idea as we talk about some of the dishes that they would have used. Cool. Seaman Tech, we'll catch up with you in just a couple of minutes in the enlisted berthing or the enlisted messes area. Okay? Awesome. Cool. So as Seaman Sek showed us, the officers are eating their meals in the wardroom. They were set off from the rest of the crew. And let's look at some of the dishes that they might have had to eat and then wash after their meals. Of course, as you saw in the illustration, they had utensils. These sailors weren't eating with their hands. They had utensils. These here are Isaac Hull's forks and spoons from our museum's collection. And what's really cool is that captains of Constitution had a real perk and that they got to put their own personal crest or symbol on their silverware. And so Isaac Hull's symbol was a dog with a wreath of laurels around its head. So I have a question for you all. If you could put your own personal crest on your silverware, what would you put? What would that be? What would be your personal symbol on your fork? Just put some ideas in the chat for us. Ooh, a trident. I like that. That's very maritime. An anchor. Okay. Yep. A narwhal. Very cool. Some more animals in there. Yeah. So your crest obviously meant something to you. You can keep typing those ideas in the chat, and folks can read what people would have put on their silverware. So that was Isaac Hull's silverware. Another thing that the officers would have had, another dish, looks like this. This is called a decanter. And what do you think was put in this bottle? There was a hint in the illustration, if you remember that. There's something that they put in this bottle. Liquids, wine, you got it. Yep. So this was a wine bottle. The officers on ships like Constitution, they drank a lot. That was another perk of being an officer, is that you had wine at your meals, you might have port, and you would also have beer. Captain Preble, who was the captain of the Constitution in the late 1700s, brought 324 gallons of beer with him onto the ship. So these guys like to drink, they like to have their alcohol, and of course you needed the dishes to do that. So in Constitution's record from 1803, they had 4 dozen wine glasses and 4 dozen beer glass tumblers. So can you do the math? 4 dozen wine glasses, 4 dozen beer tumblers. That's going to be 96 glasses, I think, if I'm doing my math right. So they had a lot of glasses to support their drinking as well that you had to wash. In terms of what they ate with, probably a set similar to this, just white ceramic ware. This is ceramic ware from a shipwreck that was found from a ship similar to the time period of Constitution. And so you can see they had this. They would have had dozens and dozens of these dishes, 6 dozen plates, 3 dozen soup plates. Why do you think they needed so many plates on a ship? There weren't that many officers. Any ideas? Why did you need so many plates on a ship? And glasses. Any ideas? Let's see. Yeah, you got it. Whoever chimed in, right, in case they broke. Ships moving back and forth, you have storms, you have to keep an extra supply of dishes on hand at all times. Now, these were the officers on Constitution. The officers on British ships at the time, they had even fancier dishes. We have a plate in our collection taken off of the HMS Guerriere after the battle with Constitution in 1812. basically the sailors went on and stole the stuff that they could as souvenirs. And so this is a plate that shows us maybe what the British officers were eating of. Some cool dragons there, some snakes, very colorful. So they were doing some cooler dishes maybe than the sailors here. Then of course, these are the officers' dishes. The enlisted men, meaning the crew, the sailors who were made up the majority of the crew, they were not eating off these fancy things. They were basically eating off tin plates, and they might have had a mug or a cup, a bowl, and a spoon. So very, very, very simple dishes compared to what the officers were eating. And so I would love, let's show how they ate actually. On the ship, they were not eating at a table with tablecloths and servers. They were sitting down on the ground on a mat, being served their food from a wooden bucket, as you can see from this illustration. And they basically had one dish to eat all their food out of. So Seaman Sek, can you show us the area where these sailors would have eaten their meals?
Well, this is the birthday kit. This is pretty much where, again, the sailors sleep, eat and sleep. And pretty much just like you said, they'll eat in a mess. And that met was comprised of about 9 to 10 people. And they'll pretty much sit all in a circle. And just like in that bucket they showed you, in that bucket will be right in the middle with food. And they'll pretty much eat from it. So just like we said right over there, that was the wardroom. That's where the officers and everything would have ate. And then a little bit forward, you would have had your midshipmen, who were kind of your officers in training. They were outside of the wardroom. And then more inskirts, you would have had actually your Marines. So your Marines would have ate around in that area over here. And then moving more forward of the ship, you would have had your sailors, you know, your ordinary seamen and your landsmen and all that. So there was also sections in which each type of sailor was designated to. And but yeah, this is birthday pretty much where they'll eat. So just take a quick glance around here.
Yeah.
And see some hammocks there. You know, that's where again they'll sleep. Just to kind of give you a rough idea.
Yeah, so not as comfortable conditions certainly as the officers, right?
Most definitely not a comfortable position. I mean, you can see I'm here with crouching here, so I'm 6'4". You know, as I said, the average height back then was 5'6". The Marines were 5'8". So either way, it's not the most comfortable place to eat, but either way they managed. So.
Okay, cool. Thanks for showing us that. Can we meet you up at the caboose in a couple minutes?
Will do. I'll be right up there.
All right. We'll catch up with you at the caboose in a sec. All right, thanks to Seaman Sek for showing us that stuff, where the sailors ate their food with their tin dishes. And of course, so we've looked at the officers' dishes, the sailors' dishes. Then there were, of course, the dishes that you use to make the food with. That was the cook's realm. And so this is a picture of the stove on HMS Victory, which was a ship, a British ship in the same era as Constitution. So they would have had similar things on their ships. This was the cook's realm. Look at all the dishes that he was using. You have frying pans, you have kettles, you have huge pots, soup ladles, a lot of dishes there that were getting dirty. You were feeding sailors, 3 times a day. And so you had to have a lot of stuff to cook their food. One unique thing to the ship's cook was this. I love the name of this implement. It's called a Tormentor. This was a large fork that you use to turn pieces of meat in that stove. And so this is a Tormentor from a museum, and this is a British illustration. And I want you to find in this painting of the ship's cook, the Tormentor. He has one ready to go in that painting as well. So an important instrument that you also had to clean. So Seaman Sek, can you just give us a quick view of the stove on Constitution and tell us what it's called?
Yes, so right over here is the stove. This is pretty much a big fire oven stove that was called the caboose. I don't know if you got a funky name there, but this was called the caboose. They would have had, this is where there was the salt junk, which was pretty much 2 parts salt, 1 part meat. And, of course, they would have it over there in the steep tub. And the steep tub is pretty much where they would soak the meat to extract all the salt. Because of course they use salt to preserve the meat. And then after that, they'll take it over here, put it in the caboose, And as I said, it pretty much works like a big a stove oven, have fire at the bottom, and it has a little. We go up on the spark deck, and you see the where the smoke lets out. But yeah, this is the cam booth right here where they'll cook the meat.
Cool.
And other stuff as well. Okay, I don't know this stuff as well. You know, you have biscuits here as well. They were baked twice, so you have other stuff cooked here as well. But it was mostly the meat. So it's good.
Okay. Good. Thanks. That's good to see. Yeah, that's good to see, to give a sense of how these meals were being made. Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna catch up with you in a second to talk about uniform. Okay.
Sounds good.
1 second. Okay. So that was what the stove looked like on Constitution. And certainly when it came time to washing all of these dishes that we've talked about, they did not have, Dawn, 4 times the cleaning power available to them on the ship. And the only materials that they had to use to clean all of these dishes and pots and beer glasses and wine glasses were these 2 materials. And so I want you to take a guess in the chat. What are these 2 materials that they use to wash dishes? They're both organic materials. And see if we can take a guess here about what those are. Okay, take a guess. Seeing sand and gravel, sand and clay, ashes and sand, concrete. Okay, yeah. You got it. A lot of you are chiming in with the right answer, so good on you. So right, the material on the right is sand. Sand was readily available on a ship. They carried sand, they used it to help the decks in battle, to give you traction, and they used it for cleaning dishes. It was a scouring agent. You could really get in there and scrub stuff off using sand. And then the material on the right, on the left, as some of you have said, is ash. Ash, charcoal. So what you have left over after you've burned wood down. And that might seem weird, like why are you going to use a dirty thing that turns you black to wash your dishes? But in fact, ash and charcoal have been used for many centuries as a cleaning agent. There are cleaning qualities to it. Even in our modern day, you might buy a face mask with charcoal in it. We use charcoal to purify our water. We put charcoal in our toothpaste. And so that was definitely something that the sailors, because of the stove, had access to that ash, and that's what they used to clean their dishes. Of course, some ship cooks got really creative. This is about a cook in the 18th century who made a dishwashing soap with oil, resin, fish glue, soda, and oxalate of potash, which is a fancy word for ash. And that was a soap that he came up with to scrub dishes. So they tried to make do with what they had, and were able to keep an idea of cleanliness because of that. So, great. So we've looked at washing dishes. After you wash your dishes, there's another thing left that you have to wash, a chore that we all have to do. Wash your clothes, do your laundry, okay? And so on the ship, this was basically your USS Constitution equivalent of your laundry basket, which was your sea bag. This, if you went on the ship, you were issued a sea bag to carry all of your uniform in, all of your clothes. Normally it would have been black, the one issued by the ship, but often sailors had a second one, which is their personal sea bag, and they decorated it as this gunner's mate, John Lord, did with his sea bag that is in our collection. And so in that sea bag is where they carried all their clothes and put their dirty clothes when they were ready to wash. So Seaman Sec, I'm gonna have you just kind of give us a preview of the uniform you're wearing. What were the type of clothes that they were wearing and having to wash?
Right, so just take a quick glance at here what I'm wearing. Actually, let me put on the top hat just to give you all an idea of how it would have looked like from top to bottom. So this pretty much made out of your standard materials that they had at the time, cotton. The pants are more of a wool material. And this is, I'm a seaman, but petty officers would have wore a white shirt, would have been a checkered shirt like this. And then, of course, you have your neckerchief, which has actually, as I learned, was to catch the grease in the back of the seamen's, in the back of the sailors' heads, because they would slick back their hair with tar. So the neckerchief would actually be to kind of catch the grease that fell off their hair. And yeah, well, they definitely would not be wearing a watch, But that's pretty much just a quick glimpse of the uniform here. Yeah.
And so do you know did they have more than one shirt, or was it just one shirt, one pair of pants? Do you know?
I'm not too sure.
Okay.
I might have had more than one pair. I mean, they had to have at least more than one pair.
Yeah.
Maybe a top or a bottom. So I'm not too sure. I'm not 100% sure. But my guess is yes, they would have had another pair of maybe a shirt or a bottom, just like I said. So. And
is that uniform comfortable?
It is actually very comfortable. It is
okay.
actually very comfortable. You can see the shirt here. I think I rock the style pretty well.
Yeah.
I do say so myself. The shirt is very comfortable. It's very loose. You gotta understand that we're doing a lot of things like climbing up the mast and all that, and they had to be able to move around. So you can see it's a very loose kind of top. And then actually, if you look in the back here, you see this kind of a diaper butt, as we would like to call it. But that was, as I said, they had to do a lot of climbing, so they had to do a lot of stepping up on high objects, so to get up there. So that's why the back here is kind of the way it is. It's kind of loose to give you that optimum mobility. So, yeah. But it is very comfortable because of that. So, yeah.
Do you prefer this uniform or your regular Navy uniform?
Well, living in the modern age, I prefer the modern uniform. But
okay.
once in a while, I like to bring this out. I mean, it looks good on me. People actually say when I came to the project, they're like, "You actually look good in it," and I'm like, "I do." So I think I look good in this as well. So as well as the modern uniforms.
Yes, you gotta rock it. Okay, good. Thank you for that explanation. We'll meet you up on the spar deck in a second to look at where the clothesline was. Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, thanks for showing that off to us. Fashion show from Seaman Sec. All right, but he's not just a fashion show. He's showing us this authentic uniform. If you are a sailor on Constitution, you are officially issued that uniform. It's not a costume. It is your official duty uniform when you serve on USS Constitution. So that gives us a sense of what they were having to wash. Their cotton shirts, their pants. It sounds like that neckerchief was super dirty if it was catching all the grease. And so washing clothes was something important. Once again, if sailors wanted to stay clean and tamp down disease, washing was something the ship took seriously. And so here is a ship order from 1815 showing us how the washing was done. On Saturday mornings, the ship's cooks are to be called at 4 o'clock, that is 4 o'clock a.m., to boil water for washing the ship's company's clothes. The hands, meaning the crew, to be turned up. They are woken up at 6 a.m. and continue washing until 7:30 o'clock. So every Saturday morning for an hour and a half, you are out on the deck of the ship washing those clothes. And so, of course, you wash your clothes are then going to be wet. And wet clothes were not something that you wanted on a ship. They took that very seriously. No wet things were allowed down below in the area where you slept because cold and wet was associated with colds and disease and sickness. So everything needed to be dry. So because of that, the ship allowed clotheslines on washing day to be hung up between the fore and the main masts, or shrouds, excuse me, of the ship. The shrouds are the lines on the sides there, which Seaman Sec will show us. So this picture gives us a sense of where the clotheslines on the ship were. And I want you to imagine 450 men's clothes flying around in the breeze, drying out on a Saturday morning after they've washed them. So Seaman Sec, can you show us, just give us a sense on Constitution where this clothesline would have been?
Yes, so this is pretty much, we're back here on the spar deck. And if you look up here, these are the shrouds. That's where they would have hung their clothes to pretty much dry. If I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so this is pretty much where they would have hung the clothes between. This is right here is the main, the forward mast, and then this right here, of course, being the main mast. So they would have hung them along between these masts here.
Yeah, that's a really big distance, right?
It is, because I mean, 450 to 500 sailors. It was a lot of sailors on board the USS Constitution, so a lot of clothes that needed to be dried. So that's kind of why they need all that space there.
Okay, I gotcha. And in the Navy now, do you all do your own laundry, or do you have someone who washes your clothes?
Oh, I mean, we do our own laundry.
Okay.
when we were probably in boot camp. In boot camp, they did the laundry for us. Yeah, we do our own laundry here, and of course, we got our fancy washing machines and the tripods and the soap and all that, which is already kind of sorted out for us. But back then, they would have had to go through a bit more lengths to wash their clothes and hang them and all that kind of stuff. So we do have a little bit easier ourselves these days, but we do our laundry for ourselves.
Okay, we see all these majestic paintings of Constitution in battle, and no one ever recorded a painting of her with all of her clothes strung out to dry. So it's something I'd like to see and imagine. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for showing us that. Okay, I just want to talk about for a second with the folks on and show you a picture so clothes, you had your clothes out to dry. Once they were dry, you would take them back and put them in your sea bag. Sea bags have not changed very much throughout the years in the Navy. This is a more modern sea bag. You can see it's very similar to the ones they used in the 1800s. And a fun fact is that in World War II, the lost and found on a ship started being called the lucky bag. And so if you lost something that would technically end up in the lucky bag, it wasn't an actual bag, but that became known as the lost and found. But it's kind of a misnomer because you were not lucky if you lost something on a ship. Most likely, if you lost a piece of clothing, you would be disciplined or punished because it showed you were just not organized and you couldn't keep your stuff together. So definitely something you wanted to be aware of on a ship, though seems really hard to me given the amount of clothes that were flying around. On our website, if you are inspired, we can share this link out at the end. We have a design your own sea bag activity. So you can try putting your own personal design on that sea bag, and maybe that will motivate you to do some laundry later. I want to make the point that these chores we've been talking about, washing dishes, washing your clothes, both involve water. But all through this, they were using salt water, not fresh water. Fresh water was a very controlled commodity on the ship. There was very little of it. Basically, each sailor on the ship was allotted about half a gallon of fresh water a day. So this is an example of a half-gallon milk jug. So that's about the amount of water each sailor had to use for fresh water. And so you're going to use fresh water for drinking and cooking. You can't spare any fresh water for washing your clothes or washing the dishes. And so usually they were doing salt water. And that salt water is going to make your clothes really itchy. It's going to make them stiff. Think about after you go to the beach, you're kind of covered in salt. And so imagine your clothes being like that all the time. So sailors really looked forward to a rainstorm because that rain was a chance for them to rinse out their clothes, get some of that salt off. And of course, they had to dry them, though, before they went back into the sea bag. And then lastly, associated with laundry is that sometimes your clothes ripped or broke. And so on Thursday afternoons, the ship rules said that you could mend your clothes. That was a time you could mend your clothes if you needed to as part of your laundry chore. All right. So I think we are actually close to our time here. I was going to talk about one more chore quickly because sometimes after you wash things, you wash dishes, you do the laundry, you've done the holy stoning, what's left? There's often a chore that's left that you have to do when there's nothing else to do on a ship. And that's a chore called picking rope. Okay, so this was the chore you did on a ship when there was nothing else left to do and you had to stay busy. Rope on a ship was made of hemp and covered in tar. It looked like this. Seaman Sec, can you just do a close-up for us of some of the rope on the ship? Is he out there?
Of course, right here, these are, if you look right here, these are our standard rigging. This is pretty much the rigging they use to prime. It's stationary, it doesn't move. And of course, this was black because it was covered with tar. And then got the running rigging right here. Of course, it's pretty much, if you tug on this, it moves something somewhere. Yep. You tug on it, it one of the masts, and this is pretty much what we use to move the mast in order to sail and all that.
Okay, good to see. Yeah, so that rope, there's a ton of it. Can you explain to our folks the difference between rope and line on a ship? I'm actually probably saying the wrong word.
Rope and they're pretty much the same exact thing.
Okay.
here on the ship, we just call them lines. So yeah, it's pretty much the same exact thing. Just the lines here on the ship, we call them lines, as opposed to, I guess, in the civilian sector, they call them ropes. But it's pretty much the same exact thing, you know, because most people are going to come on the ship and they're going to be like, oh, look at those ropes. It's kind of the same exact thing there.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so the ship has like miles of this line, and it often, you know, it's going to take a beating because of the weather. You have this tar is going to eventually wear off, and your rope is going to start to unravel, okay? It's going to start to come apart, and you needed to fix it. And so one of the chores that sailors did was a chore where they fixed the rope by unrolling it. I'm going to show a picture here. They would unroll the rope, unravel it until it got into these really tiny strands, and then they would roll these strands of hemp back together and create a stronger rope. So the picture you see here are modern restoration folks who work on USS Constitution doing this chore of rolling out the rope and restringing it together. And it was called picking rope or picking oakum. It was another chore that sailors did not like because it was busy work on the ship. But I want you to notice how dirty this is, right? These ropes are covered in tar. You can see their aprons are black. So just another thing to keep in mind, that Seaman Sec's uniform is brilliantly clean and white, but most of the sailors on Constitution would have had a pretty dirty uniform, which gives you another reason to try to wash it every week. All right. So we are about at time. We were going to talk about a couple more chores on the ship, but I think that is a good way to end today. I want to remind everybody that these chores we talked about today, they were all done in silence. We talked about this last week, but a reminder that you couldn't talk to your friends while you washed the dishes or picked rope. You couldn't listen to your iPod or your music. Silence was the first principle of discipline and was to be enforced at all times. And you know what that also means? No complaining about these chores you had to do. So awesome. So I want to remind everybody that our Sailor's Life for Me website on the USS Constitution is a really fun website where you can learn a lot about what sailors did on Constitution. We talked about one aspect today, but feel free to play our game. And with our poll today, I want to launch our poll. We talked about some new chores on Constitution today, and I want you guys to vote. What of the chores we talked about today would you like to do the least? Wash the dishes, do your laundry, pick rope, or clean the animal pens. That one we didn't get to, but that would be kind of dirt. You guys can probably assume that was cleaning up after the animals on the ship. So we're watching the votes come in here. Okay, hopefully you're voting. None of these are maybe so bad as cleaning the head like last time, but it looks like, all right, it looks like picking rope and cleaning the animal pens are some of the front runners here. Picking rope for sure. I think that's going to be our winner. That boring task of picking rope apart and putting it back together was not the chore that you guys wanted to do. Washing the dishes, you guys are dishwashing proud. Not many people mind washing the dishes apparently. So that's good to see. Well, yeah, so just keep in mind, once again, that we're in a time now, we're trying to be clean, we're trying to watch out for our health, and sailors were also doing the same thing on the ship in the way that they could, and that was by doing these daily chores that involved washing and cleaning and keeping their ship in order to stay healthy. So I hope that inspires you to go do your chores with some new knowledge. Seaman Sec, can you give a shout out goodbye?
Yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed the tour, and hopefully once things clear up, if you ever get a chance to visit Boston, or just if you're already living in the area, please stop by the USS Constitution. You know, we do have a lot of events going on in the summer, so make sure to stop by. I hope you guys enjoy the tour. Again, my name is Seaman Sekizivu, and signing out.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'm just seeing a couple Q&A here as well. Why are they wearing gloves while they picked rope? That was a modern amenity. As I said, the rope was really tarry and dirty, and you can kind of get rope burn too from rubbing rope all day. So that was why they would have worn gloves. Challenges did people face? Oh, so many challenges. Hopefully some of our next programs will get into more aspects of life at sea and some of the challenges sailors face. Certainly battle, certainly disease, illness, and then just the sheer danger of doing the work that they did on the ship. And besides chores, what else did they do when not working? They did some fun stuff. They might have written letters, they might have played games, told stories. And so we'll hopefully do a program soon about some of the recreation, the non-chore things that sailors could do in their free time. So thank you so much for joining us today. We will be sending out a survey at the end of the program. Please, we value your feedback about ideas about these to a sailor's life lives. And thanks to Seaman Sec, who I think has signed off, and be well out there, all of you. And thanks from the USS Constitution Museum.